The Apocalypse of Moses retells the story of Adam and Eve, but with many extra details not found in Genesis. Here, Eve becomes the narrator, describing the sorrow of leaving paradise, the pain of childbirth, and the grief of watching Adam grow old. When Adam dies, she describes the scene. Angels come down, wrap his body, and carry him away for burial, while their children cry aloud. It feels almost like an ancient family diary. But because these details don't match the biblical account, the church rejected it. Still, it shows how deeply people wanted to imagine life outside the Garden of Eden. The book of Adam and Eve, also called the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, goes even further into legend. It claims that Cain and Abel were born with twin sisters, and Cain wanted to marry his own. When his parents forbade it, his jealousy boiled over. In rage, Cain killed Abel, and the book says the earth itself spit out Abel's body, refusing to keep it. For a time, Adam and Eve kept Abel's body in a cave, grieving over him daily. These tales fascinated some early Christians, but they contradicted Genesis. So the church dismissed it as fanciful folklore and banned it. The Apocalypse of Adam takes a mystical turn. It describes Adam secretly whispering to Seth on his deathbed, passing on hidden knowledge about cosmic rulers and angelic powers. Instead of sin and redemption, it offers a strange alternate history of the world. This was tied to the Gnostic movement, a belief that salvation came through secret knowledge. The church rejected it, saying the true gospel was open to all. The Acts of Peter, Andrew, and John read almost like adventure tales. In these pages, the apostles perform bizarre and sometimes comical miracles. Peter points to a dog, and the animal speaks with a man's voice. Andrew is said to have battled a giant sea creature. John once told a swarm of bedbugs to leave his room for the night, and the insects obeyed. These stories blurred the line between miracle and magic. Bishops declared them dangerous fantasies, and the books were banned. The Acts of Paul and Thecla was another popular story. Thecla was a young woman who heard Paul preach and chose Christ over her family and fiancé. For this, she was condemned to die. First, she was tied to a stake as fire raged around her, but the flames bent away, leaving her untouched. Later, she was thrown to wild lions in the arena, but the beasts simply lay at her feet. Crowds were astonished, and Thecla became a hero of faith, especially for women. But church leaders rejected the story as dangerous fiction and excluded it from the canon. The Apocalypse of Paul expands a single New Testament verse into a terrifying vision of the afterlife. Paul wrote that he was caught up into the third heaven. This book turns that into a full tour of heaven and hell. He sees liars with tongues burning in fire, adulterers chained and tortured, and the greedy forced to eat filth. The scenes are graphic, designed to shock and scare. The book thrilled some Christians, especially monks, but the church condemned it as spurious. They feared people would focus on sensational torments instead of Christ's true message. The Gospel of Peter also goes far beyond Scripture. It describes the resurrection with bizarre detail. The stone rolls away, Jesus steps out of the tomb, taller than the sky, and behind him comes a giant cross. Then the cross itself begins to speak. For a time, some Christians read it in Syrian churches, but the bishop of Antioch investigated and declared it heretical. It was too sensational, too distorted, and quickly banned. The Gospel of Philip is best known for one scandalous line. It says Mary Magdalene was so close to Jesus that he kissed her often. Some have twisted this into rumors of marriage, but the book itself was written by Gnostic teachers, promoting mystical sacraments and spiritual unions. It was never intended as history. The church rejected it for distorting doctrine and feeding scandal. The Gospel of Thomas is one of the most famous banned books. It contains 114 sayings of Jesus, no miracles, no crucifixion, no resurrection. In one, he says, "Split a piece of wood, and I am there." In another, he who finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. The book claims these were secret words known only to a few. The church declared it heretical. The true gospel, they said, was not hidden riddles, but the good news of Christ for all. The Gospel of Mary also centers on secret revelation. In this book, Mary, likely Mary Magdalene, shares visions she says came from Jesus alone. She describes the soul's journey after death, through struggles with powers that try to stop it. The disciples listen, but Peter objects. Why would Jesus reveal truth to a woman instead of them? This clash of authority was explosive. The church saw it as undermining the apostles, and they condemned the book as heresy. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas paints a shocking picture of Jesus as a boy. In one story, he shapes clay birds with his hands, then breathes life into them and watches them fly away. But when another child ruins his play, Jesus strikes him dead. Later, he blinds a neighbor for bumping into him. At times, he softens, healing the sick, even raising the dead. But overall, the portrait is troubling.
The church said it made Jesus appear cruel and reckless. They banned it as blasphemous. And finally, the most scandalous of all, the Gospel of Judas. In Scripture, Judas betrays Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. But in this book, Judas is the only disciple who truly understands him. Jesus secretly tells Judas, "You will sacrifice the man that clothes me." Here, Judas is not the traitor, but the chosen one, the hero who fulfills Jesus' hidden plan. The other disciples are portrayed as blind fools, while Judas alone sees the truth. This shocking reversal horrified the church fathers. They denounced it as blasphemy and suppressed it completely. For them, it was not just a distortion, it was an attack on the very heart of the gospel. From Abel's body rejected by the earth, to lions bowing before Thecla, to burning tongues, talking crosses, clay birds that take flight, and Judas as the so-called hero, these books were banned because they twisted the truth. They remind us that early Christians were curious, imaginative, and sometimes misled. But the church guarded the gospel carefully, rejecting secret knowledge, wild legends, and scandalous reversals, and preserving the good news of Christ, who lived, died, and rose again for all.